famous rabbis yesteryear. Now, today happens to be the 26th of Elul, marks the Hilula of a very famous Tunisian rabbi. His name was Rabbi Yosef Guez, Zechet Tzadik Libracha, very famous rabbi. His family name could be pronounced various different ways. Now, we're not too sure when he actually was born. According to some opinions, it was around 1860, 1861, or 1868. But be it as it may, he was a great rabbi. That's one thing for sure. In Tunisia, in various other places, let's just explore. I think he would become a grand rabbi in Tunisia. Let's just say he would serve in the area of Suez, I think between 1906 and 1928. And then later on in Tunis, 1928 to 1934, and was chief rabbi until I think around the time period he passed away. And it's actually interesting. He was the grandson of another famous rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Guez, who I think he would be named after according to the Sephardic tradition. And he is the son of Rabbi Chaim David Guez, who's a direct descendant from the chief Rabbi David Guez, who was, I think, a great rabbi, Talmudist in North Africa, belonging to a rabbinic dynasty all the way back at least to the 17th century. And he founded the Keter Torah synagogue, which will be, I think, the only synagogue in Suez nowadays. And much is really actually chronicled about him, which we can learn about inside this video now. So let's explore a few of the highlights of the great rabbi's life. So as we said before, he was born in Tunis around between 1860 to 1868. And I think his mother's name was Rabbinit Rachel Saada. His father's name was Rabbi Chaim David Guez. I think we actually spoke about his father at one point in time. He was from the great, obviously, rabbinic dynasty in itself, and various much can be related. But he was also the author of the Chaim L'Yisrael book, which is very much quoted by many of the great rabbis of Tunisia, respectively. He'll be also a Dayan, a judge in Tunis, and the author of the Chaim, as we said before, Chaim L'Yisrael book, which is on Shas. And I think it was his son Rabbi Yosef Judge, I believe. He had a famous, who was a great rabbi also, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so he would, I think, in the year Heitaf Reish Samach Gimel, we're talking about Rabbi Yosef Guez, he would become appointed, I believe, a Dayan, a judge, in the city of Madya. I think this happens to be an area in the central part, let's just say, of Tunisia, respectively. A place we've spoken about on various occasions before. Then come the year 1906, he'll be appointed head of Jewish court in Susa. Remember, this name area of Susa was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the third biggest area, maybe city, I think, maybe in Tunisia. Place very, very famous, which we could maybe speak a lot about. Over there, once he was there, and head of Jewish court there, he would found a Beit Knesset called the Bet Knesset Keter HaTorah. Hopefully we're going to speak about this synagogue at one stage in time. I think it was actually started, I think, around the year 1853, if I'm not mistaken, but I have to double check on that. It's a famous synagogue, respectively, in Tunisia, this place was, or the Keter Torah of Sus, respectively. Yeah, I think at that point in time, in 1853, there was as many as 400 Jewish families in Tunisia. And I think, come 1913, it will be built. It was obviously done through Rabbi Yosef Guez. And the synagogue, I think, was the main synagogue in the city. And obviously, I think the community will continue to flourish it. Even post Second World War, I think in 1946, there was as many as 3,500. I think recently this is a Natural Heritage Institute of Tunisia. This synagogue is actually placed under, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very, very famous place. But he would actually be the founder of the Keter Torah synagogue. Okay, so that also is important to point out. I think 1928, the rabbi of Tunisia, I think, passed away, if I'm mistaken. His name was Rabbi Nissim Yarchi, another great rabbi we've spoken about. He himself lived between 1850 to 1928. He was actually a famous Dayan and rabbi in Tunisia, head of Jewish court, and the chief rabbi of the Jewish community of Tunisia. So he passed away in 1928. This will actually bring Rabbi Yosef Guez to the position, let's just say, in that prominent position in of itself. So he was actually quite close to another rabbi at that point in time. There was a rabbi called Rabbi Moshe Trog, who was also a prominent rabbi and head rabbi in Tunisia, I think, especially between 1921 to 1927. He would actually help in regards to strengthening the yeshiva called Yeshivat Chevrat Talmud, which I think was actually formed by Rabbi Shlomo Dana, which we mentioned about on previous occasions. I think over there he'll be invited to go to Jerba, to Tunis, to various other places before. I think Rav Matzliach Mezuz was actually close with him, if I'm not mistaken. There was a connection between them. And I think later on, Rav Matzliach Mezuz would actually open up the famous Yeshivat Kisei Rachamim, I think at a later stage at time. He was also close to other great rabbis, including the famous Rabbi Chalfon Moshe HaKohen, Rabbi Yisrael Zaytun, two very famous Tunisian rabbis, respectively. Rabbi Zaytun being also a head of Jewish court that we have to point out. He'll be appointed to his role. I think he would pass away in 1934, Rav Gaj would, and that would have been on the 26th of Elul on that specific date that we're talking about 91 years ago. I think afterwards, Rabbi David Katurzo will become the next chief rabbi of Tunisia. He was also, I think, a head Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Chevrat Talmud, a place that hopefully we'll speak about later on. And he was also nicknamed Abir. He was given this crown, let's just say, and he was given, I think, a Legion of Honor by a very important person in the French government, if I'm not mistaken. I think his name was Gaston Domargue, if I'm not mistaken. So that is also very important. Now, he left some great Torah colossal works, including the Yagen Hashem, which is a shut, Shelot Shuvot, question and answers book, on various different teachings on the Shas, the Talmud Bavli, various different drashot. I think maybe it was lost during the Second World War. I think Machon Moroshat Tunisia would actually bring it out at a later stage. Another book of his was called the Yikra de Shechvi. This was a manuscript form. I think it was various different sermons, Drashot ala Niftarim shektav tkufa kunat barim mehedia besusa. So it was actually written, let's just say, at the time period where he was very much in those locales at that point in time, and another very important Torah work we must also have to point out. Okay, so another book of his was called Hespedim B'Droshim, which was, I think, found through Machon Yad Yitzchak Ben Tzvi and Yosef Abibi, or Abibi, respectively. So this was another great book in of itself. I think he was also Shluchei de Rabbanan, if I'm not mistaken, or he was connected, I think, to Rabbi Mordechai Shlomo Alfia, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there'll be other various books, including Chaim Yisrael, and various other books also. Let's explore a few more highlights within regards to the great rabbi. We spoke about how he was connected to Rabbi Nissim Yerchi, who he would actually take over at a later stage of time. It's interesting, while he was a chief rabbi, Rabbi Guez, he would found the Magen Hadat Fund, I believe, which was there to help scholars financially so they can devote their time to Torah studies. And he very much encouraged Torah study and the establishment of various Beit Midrashes for rabbinical students. So that we also have to point out. I think he, obviously, as being part of the synagogue, the Keter Torah, I think there's Chevrat Keter Torah Society and the seminary open to all students, if I'm not mistaken. And it was established the Lechem Shabbat Fund for financial assistance for the needy in preparation for Shabbat. So that also we have to point out. Let's explore a few of the highlights from Rav Guez's books, including, I think, from the Yagen Hashem, Melamed, Tekanat Hillel Zaken She'al Yidei Ha'achdut Makiyem Kol HaTorah. The importance this message is giving within regards to unity, just in general, how important and crucial it could prove to be. So that is one of the teachings there. Then another famous teaching of his, if I'm not mistaken, just looking at the Hayumi notes, Melamed Shemarov Ahabato Lo Yomtin Ad Shiavo Beno Etzlo. That I think comes from page number 150, very important teaching in the Yagen Hashem. And then in the third drasha, I think in page 124 says, Melamed Shlo Livchon B'Makbelim Lomar Zeroi V'Ze Ino Ra'oi. So another important teaching. And another one, Melamed Shalem Hamshech Acharei Shorosho Lelechet B'Dekei Avotav HaKadoshim. This actually comes from page 155 from the Yagen Hashem. Another teaching in page 184 in the Yagen Hashem, I believe. Melamed L'Akir B'Tuvat HaMelachot B'Afitza Chirut Mada Ufarnasa. Another important teaching. Melamed Shliyamut HaNefesh B'ma Shu Margish B'Metikot HaTorah. This comes from page 133 in the Yagen Hashem. And one last teaching from the Yagen Hashem. I believe, the 10th drasha in 142. So this is another important teaching. So you see, it's filled with various different teachings. His books are, which is very important to point out. Now, friends, over here, we're a community here. We are learning about famous rabbis of yesteryear. Now, if you descend from any of the great rabbis we are speaking about, please don't hesitate. Let me know. And maybe we've recorded about the great Chacham also inside the series. We've recorded about nearly a staggering 1,250 biography videos of great rabbis, just a few short highlights. It's many highlights we can say about the great rabbanim of yesteryear. So that is something I would definitely very much have to point out to all you people listening out there. Now, friends, we are nearing a staggering at the moment 7,500 members, which is a brilliant achievement. So please, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please subscribe also to the channel. We don't just do videos on great rabbis you see here. We tour around Israel, different, let's say, famous spots of Israel, important places that really is, let's just say, important. People have to see and get inspired and share and enjoy. So please, everyone, don't forget, have a great day and so much more. Learn more about the great rabbis of yesteryear and blessings from Israel. I really appreciate everything and take care. Thank you for watching.